A Russian cargo ship glides silently along the Irtysh River. It carries oil, timber, and something even more valuable, influence. Isolated from Europe and facing Western trade restrictions, Moscow is betting on its rivers to boost trade. Spanning over 100,000 kilometers, these rivers don't just carry water, but power. A dozen of them are navigable, or could become so with modest investments. The Kremlin sees these rivers not merely as waterways, but as trade corridors connecting Siberia to China and the Arctic to Asia. For now, river transport accounts for only a fraction of Russia's total freight. Railways and pipelines do the heavy lifting, but they are overloaded, especially in the east. With China now Russia's main trading partner, the existing land infrastructure can't keep up with the growing demand. That's why the Kremlin is turning to its rivers, transforming geography into strategy. Because while politicians speak different languages, rivers speak the language of commerce. While Russia redirects its rivers, it feels like everything is moving faster. And it is. McKinsey predicts that artificial intelligence will inject $13 trillion into the global economy by 2030. On the other hand, 375 million workers will need to change careers entirely. So, if you want to stay ahead, learn AI. Russia and China are now walking the same path. Trade between them has surged, hitting a record $245 billion. Moscow relies on Chinese goods to replace lost Western imports, while Beijing buys more Russian oil, gas, and metals. But the trade boom hasn't been steady. It accelerates, slows down, and then picks up again. The reason for this is infrastructure, or the lack thereof. The Eastern Russia's road and rail network is overwhelmed. Built for a different era, it is insufficient, outdated, and too narrow to handle the surge in freight driven by trade restrictions. And shifting alliances, Russia has made some improvements, expanding the Trans-Siberian Railway and the Baikal line. But bottlenecks persist. The Kuznetsovsky Tunnel and the stretch between Chita and Khabarovsk ... slow down freight transport and limit future growth. The Russians are working tirelessly to address these bottlenecks. By 2032, they aim to increase the Trans-Siberian's eastern capacity to 270 million tons. But even that may not be enough. The geography is vast, the demand is growing, and steel rails alone can't bear the weight. That's why Moscow is turning to its rivers to ease the pressure on the railways. Over the next 6 years, the Kremlin plans to invest $6.2 billion in subsidies for shipbuilding and incentives for companies ordering large tonnage ships, such as supertankers, LNG carriers, and freighters. The ultimate goal is to shift freight from railways to rivers. Not all rivers serve the same purpose, but in Russian-Chinese geopolitics, rivers play two distinct roles. Those that flow south to north, like the Irtysh, are mainly used for transport, while those that run west to east often serve as natural borders. This rule of thumb makes Russia's river ambitions not only strategic, but also politically delicate. The extent of the Russian-Chinese border follows the natural course of the Argun, Amur, and USS Ural rivers. They were once the stage for fierce territorial disputes. Resolved in 1991 and 2008, largely on China's terms. But as China industrializes and urbanizes, tensions are creeping back. Beijing and Moscow disagree on how the basin should be developed. The pace of that development and its environmental impact, with Chinese industry on one side and Russian farmland on the other. Disagreements over unregulated construction, water quality, and flood management are becoming more common. Still, Moscow remains silent. Western restrictions have made economic cooperation with China too important to risk. So, instead of confrontation, the Kremlin is adapting. One example is with drones. Russia's Ministry of Economic Development supports plans for an international drone hub in the Amur region. The idea is simple: bypass roads and railways entirely. Small packages, up to 50 kilos, would be flown across the Amur River directly to China. No bridges, no customs terminals, just lightweight logistics deployed quickly. It's a solution to a growing problem and a sign of how Moscow is trying to keep trade flowing eastward. Still, the Amur is a border, not a transport hub. While it is commercially navigable, it does little to move goods to the European side of Russia, where most of the country's population and industrial base lie. That's where the Irtysh comes in. It begins in the Altai Mountains in China's Xinjiang province and flows northwest through Lake Zishan in Kazakhstan. Along the way, it meets the Yashim and Tobol rivers before merging with the Oby River in western Siberia. At this point, the Oby-Irtysh Basin becomes more than a river, but a potential artery of international trade. Together, they form Russia's largest river system and the second largest in Asia. More importantly, they create a natural corridor linking inland Eurasia to the Arctic Ocean. Meanwhile, Russia's other major rivers, like the Lena, Yenisei, and Volga, form a network of inland waterways connecting southern Russia to the Arctic. Each has a unique role. The Volga is by far the most developed, connecting to the Caspian. The Yenisei is navigable but commercially underutilized due to rugged terrain and sparse settlements. The Lena, though remote and frozen for much of the year, is essential for supplying Russia's northernmost regions during the short summer thaw. All these rivers are important, but the Oby-Irtysh Basin is different. It's not just a river, it's a corridor, a way to rewrite Russia's place on the map without redrawing a single border. The northern sea route is often seen as risky, but for Moscow, it's the future. Spanning Russia's Arctic coast, this maritime route connects Europe to Asia and offers a shortcut that could redefine global logistics. Today, it's navigable without icebreakers for only a few months a year. But by the 2030s, climate trends may make it viable year-round. That's why the Kremlin isn't just investing in ships, but building the backbone. New Arctic ports are being constructed in Murmansk, Arkhangelsk, Vaiksen, Tiksi, and Pevek. But ports alone aren't enough. What Moscow needs is freight flowing into the northern sea route from deep inland. And that's where the rivers come in. The Oby-Irtysh Basin is the heart of this strategy. As it flows north from the Chinese border, it intersects Russia's railways and major cities. More specifically, it crosses from Kazakhstan into Omsk Oblast, a long-overlooked region, but not insignificant. Omsk is Siberia's third-largest city, with 1.2 million residents. It's already on the Trans-Siberian Railway. But what sets it apart is its access to Kazakhstan, China, and following the Irtysh to the Oby. The Arctic Ocean, with the right infrastructure, Omsk could become a multimodal transport hub, connecting rails, roads, and rivers in all directions. And it's not alone. Further upstream is Novosibirsk, Siberia's largest city, with 1.6 million residents. Like Omsk, it sits on both the Trans-Siberian Railway and the Oby-Irtysh Basin. But unlike Omsk, Novosibirsk is already a distribution center for central Russia. Add port infrastructure, shipping lanes, and river freight capacity, and it could become the logistical heart of inland Eurasia. This, then, is the core of the Kremlin's strategy, to fuse rivers, railways, and sea routes into a single system. It's not just about moving goods more efficiently, but about redirecting the flow of power. A system like this would help bypass bottlenecks, evade Western pressures. In the late 19th century, both cities emerged from isolation to become vital transport nodes. They thrived not because of what they produced, but because of where they were. The Kremlin now wants to recreate the conditions that fueled that rapid growth, not just in Omsk and Novosibirsk, but across the country. To that end, Russia plans to open 6 new multimodal logistics centers by 2027. The locations: Omsk, Perm, Saratov, Samara, Dimitrov, and the Amur region. These sites weren't chosen randomly. They form a framework for inland movement, connecting distant regions through a shared network of rivers. More such multimodal projects are likely to emerge in the coming years. With the Oby-Irtysh Basin as the nerve center of Russia's strategy, momentum is building beyond Russia's borders too. In May 2025, Kazakhstan and China signed a new deal to boost regional connectivity. It includes plans for a multimodal transit corridor running through the Irtysh River. Although Russia isn't a formal signatory, the corridor passes through Russian territory, and the Kremlin sees an opportunity. If connected to the northern sea route, the China-Kazakhstan corridor could form a single spine of trade from Xinjiang to the Arctic. Ideally, Russian lawmakers would want China's Belt and Road Initiative to connect with the Lena, Yenisei, and Oby-Irtysh river basins as well. Doing so would transform the face of Siberia and turn it into the logistical heart of Eurasia. President Putin said as much in March 2025 at the International Arctic Forum, where he outlined a policy to develop inland river ports and logistics facilities, connecting them to the Northern Sea Route and the Trans-Siberian Railway. Russia is still in the early stages of this grand plan. But if it works, it could transform the country's geography into a cohesive logistical system. However, this vision comes with challenges. Turning rivers into trade corridors means navigating politics. Russia needs China's cooperation, but water politics is never just about water. For China, the Irtysh supports the fast-growing Xinjiang region. For Kazakhstan, it supplies water to nearly a third of the population and sustains almost half of its agriculture. In both cases, the Irtysh is more than a trade route, it's a lifeline. This puts Russia's ambitions slightly at odds. With its neighbors' priorities, still, the Russians are not easily discouraged. Trade restrictions have left the country with few levers, and rivers, once overlooked, are now back in play. With Moscow and Beijing standing shoulder to shoulder, Russia sees an opportunity. In this pivot to the east, its rivers may determine how far it goes. I'm your host, Steph, from Checkmate Geopolitics. If you enjoyed what you saw, leave a comment, hit the like button, and share the video. Either way, thanks for your time, and see you next time.